Greeting.
All right.
Good morning and welcome to Heroes and Patriots. Thank you for joining us. This program is about national security, intelligence, and foreign policy. Today is Thursday, July 3rd, 2025, and we are coming to you live from the studios of KMUD in Northern California. Hello, I'm Mary Massey, joined by co-host John SAKOWICZ. And John, good morning. Welcome back. I know you've been traveling, and it's good to have you in person.
Yes, thank you, Mary, and good morning to our audience listening to the broadcast in our broadcasting area here in Northern California and to our national audience listening to the live web stream. And yes, I've come back from 2 months in New York, much of it New York City. So uh, as with our guests, I'm a native New Yorker. And I'm following this election in New York City very closely. And we've got the perfect guest at the perfect time on the perfect subject.
So, throughout the program, we invite you as listeners to speak with guests on topic. The number to call 707-923-3911. Our engineer this morning is Cece, and she will be routing your phone calls so that you can add to the conversation. So, as John mentioned, we have a native New Yorker joining us. Her name is India Walton. She is the senior strategist for Roots Action and particularly the Education Fund. And we're going to be talking with her about, as John alluded to, the elections, the recent elections with Zoran Mandami and Andrew Como. So let's first bring her into the program. Welcome to the program, Miss Walton.
Good morning. How are you?
We are great. How's the New York weather now? Finally free of the thunderstorms?
Oh, it's beautiful. I'm from Buffalo, so I'm a little bit away from New
Uh,
York City, but it's a beautiful day here in Buffalo.
Well, this is the first time you are with us, and we invite you to insert any topics or information that we fail to ask. Let's start out with your background. You ran as a Democratic candidate for the mayor of Buffalo. Could you tell us that story and how you got involved in the politics of Buffalo?
Sure. So I'm a longtime activist and organizer here in Buffalo. I've worked on campaigns such as criminal legal reform, the campaign to end cash bail, raise the age, $15 an hour minimum wage, legalizing adult use cannabis, you name it. I've sort of been around. And I was also one of the leaders of the local protests after the murder of George Floyd in 2020.
Hmm.
And we didn't see the response in Buffalo that a lot of other major cities saw when it came to police reform. We had a black man who was mayor, and he just wasn't moving. Buffalo's a pretty conservative city, majority Democrat, but like very conservative. And just out of frustration, not only with that in the moment, but just the past 16 years of his reign as a strong form of mayor, where we didn't see a lot of progress in closing the racial wealth gap. I mean, Buffalo's the third poorest and sixth most segregated city of its size in the nation. So just out of sheer frustration and, having grown a base and folks looking to me saying, well, what do we do next? How do we hold them accountable? And we eventually said that I was gonna run for mayor. So that's
And,
what we did.
and run for mayor you did. As a Democratic Socialist, as a first-time candidate, and you beat the incumbent Buffalo Mayor Byron Brown in the 2021 Democratic primary. First of all, congratulations. Second of all, how did you do it?
We organized, and it was amazing because not only was I a first time candidate, but because I didn't have the backing of the establishment, we didn't have any infrastructure either. Everyone on our campaign for the primary election was a volunteer. We watched YouTube videos. We took Zoom courses online with the Working Families Party, and we learned how to run a campaign basically while we were running it, but we knocked on lots of doors. And I never said no. Anywhere I was invited to come speak and introduce myself, I showed up.
How about money? How were you at fundraising?
We started off pretty slow, small dollar donations, but eventually, our story got out nationally. And once we got the support of Senator Sanders, and once we won the primary, we did wind up raising over $1 million, and none of it came from corporate PACs or developers or anything like that.
Now, tell our audience what happened after you won the primary. So, setting the stage here, young, brilliant black woman wins the primary in
Yes.
a largely Democratic city, albeit a blue collar, conservative, what we call a blue dog Democratic city. You win the primary. You're expected to win the mayor's race, but then the guy that you just beat, the incumbent mayor, decides to run as a write-in candidate. What happens then?
Oh man, all hell broke loose. Um, you know, even though I was frustrated with the way he governed, I've always been a believer in the democratic process. And I believed that if I won that primary fair and square, that he would concede and that he would facilitate, a transition for me into office and maybe even mentor me a little bit.
Mhm.
But, as the congratulations calls were coming in, his never came.
Didn't happen.
It didn't happen.
So he decided to run as a write-in candidate. He
Yeah.
had with the backing from business groups, the Republicans, the police. I'm guessing
Hmm.
some of the unions, and he won. He won.
Yes.
He he beat you, and then he resigned to run. Oh my God, this is like a movie script. An off-track betting operation. Oh my God, what planet am I living on?
It isn't it like you couldn't make it up if you tried,
Oh,
right? And I mean it got nasty. The one thing about it was that I mean, he had 30 plus years of name recognition, right? Before he was mayor, he was a state senator, he was a city council person, he was once the chair of the New York State Democratic Party.
right.
So he's got all this name recognition. But the kicker is that people didn't have to write his name in. They had pre-inked stamps that
Oh,
they passed out right at the polls. In fact, there was a person who was arrested and charged, a poll worker, who was found pre-stamping ballots before she gave them to people.
Ooh.
So now I'm not saying he didn't, he won handily, right? He won by maybe 14, 15 points. However, there was some nefarious things going on, and we still don't really know the legality of using a stamp instead of handwriting in a name.
so if he wins the mayor's race, only to quit and to run an off-track betting operation,
Hmm.
and I've got Italian relatives who run their own off-track betting operations and numbers rackets. Why did he want to be mayor? Only to quit.
I believe that he didn't want to be mayor. In the primary, there was this sort of rose garden. Like he never acknowledged me. He didn't debate me. He just pretended as if I wasn't running until I won. And I think that once I won, the people who he is beholden to, the developers and the big businesses, pulled him to the side and said that you have to stay in because this lady is talking about making things equitable and fair, and
Right.
that's not the Buffalo that we run. So you need to stay until we figure something else out.
And what after the race, after the mayor's race, what happened to your agenda? What happened to your Democratic Socialist agenda? What happened to your equity agenda? Did any remnants of it find their way into the new administration?
Well, I mean, there are small wins that I claim, right? Like during one debate, I suggested citywide composting and he like laughed in my face. But now we have a citywide composting program.
Right.
That's something that I'm proud of. And I think that the the political discourse in Buffalo has changed a lot. I think that people are expecting a lot more services from government. There's a lot of affordable housing developments that have been started. A lot more infrastructure improvements are going on. So I do think that, some things have been considered.
Any progress on race relations in the city of Buffalo?
After the election in 2022, we had a horrible, horrible racist attack on a grocery store in the Black community where 10 people were murdered. And that brought out everybody, local, state, even President Biden came to Buffalo and said, we're going to focus on racial justice and all of these things. Nothing's really changed.
No.
Nothing has. People wear t-shirts that say Buffalo Love and we are all one, but it's empty. There still isn't another full service grocery store in that neighborhood. It's still very blighted. There's promises of investments, right? But not a lot
All right.
materially has
All right.
changed.
So moving on to the New York City race. We have a Democratic Socialist, a Bernie Berner, Zoran Mamdani, who surprisingly beat Andrew Cuomo.
Right.
Hmm.
Uh, and now Andrew Cuomo is deciding whether he wants to run as an independent, much
Hmm.
like Byron Brown did against you. What advice would you give Zoran? Uh, Contextualize for us, please, what he's up against in terms of a political machine, in terms
Hmm.
of PAC money, in terms of Wall Street and the powers that be that will really resist the reform agenda at all costs,
Yeah.
including having multi-billionaires, hedge fund types, and what have you, just prime the pump for big money to fight this very decent guy that should be the next mayor of New York City, but may not be the next mayor of New York City.
And that the key word is that he's a decent guy. Zohran is truly he's just good people. And even the thought of, you know, establishment Democrats backing Andrew Cuomo, who in 2021 resigned from the governor's office in disgrace under multiple scandals, including sexual harassment, exploiting his workers to produce a book, um, you know, lying about nursing home deaths as a result of COVID. That's if if you couldn't cut it as governor, I wouldn't want you to be mayor of my city. And somehow folks were able to ignore all of his misdeeds and endorse him. And the only thing that Zohran has done wrong is say, hey, we have an affordability issue in New York that we need to address. And I want to focus on freezing the rent and making sure people can afford where they live, providing affordable groceries, fast free buses, and universal childcare. And it is lost on me how people believe that he is the radical one when we have people spending $20 million. They spent more than $20 million in that primary. And if you would just give that to the people, how
Right.
much good could be done, right? Like people are spending so much money to make sure that poor people stay poor and that powerful people get more power and wealthy people become wealthier. And they're, in the meantime, demonizing this very wholesome individual who just wants to do good things for working people.
Right.
If you'd like to join the conversation, 707-923-3911. We are speaking with India Walton. We're talking about the recent primaries in New York and Buffalo. And please join us in the phone conversation. Now, you moved from your political career. I don't want to say you've ended it, but you've moved over to Roots Action, and we'd be remiss to not try to understand what Roots Action is and what you specifically do for them and how it dovetails into our conversation.
Yeah, I love working for Roots Action. Roots Action is a digital organizing group. So we allow for people to produce their own petitions and actions to ask Congress members or organizations to do certain things. And then we also have campaigns of our own that we run. One of the most significant ones recently was that we were the first group to call for Joe Biden to step aside and not to run again. So that's the type of work that we do. We also do a lot of peace work, anti-war, anti-nuclear work, raising awareness about the threat of nuclear war and just war in general. And because I work with great folks like Jeff Cohen and Norman Solomon, I'm also able to do quite a bit of local work. So I do locally work right now because the time calls for it around immigration reform and resisting mass deportations.
What advice would you give Mamdani right now?
Stay the course. The voters chose you in the primary for a reason because your message is resonant and you don't have to moderate or capitulate to establishment and corporate Democrats. They are the ones who are doing it wrong, not us. And I think that we need to focus less on his identity and more on what he wants to do.
Yeah, for the life of me, I don't know what anyone would see in Andrew Cuomo at this point. I kind of followed that campaign very closely, and as I mentioned, I spent the last 2 months in the city, um, and Cuomo seemed listless. He almost seemed antisocial. He just wasn't engaging with people. He wasn't engaging with the press. He did not make that many appearances. I don't know, he just seems sullen. And you know, I have a relative who was his father, Mario Cuomo, the former governor of New York State. I have a relative on the Italian side of my family, Vince Tizzi, who was Mario Cuomo's chief of staff as governor. And I'm here to tell you that, Cuomo was the father was very, very dynamic.
Mhm.
His son in this last primary was just lifeless. And I don't get what New Yorkers would see in any kind of a future with a has-been who was accused of groping one of his female bodyguard details and in an elevator of all things. My God,
Hmm.
as the father of four daughters, I'm just aghast that a governor would be accused of that. I don't see anything but a clear choice in Dami, but yet you have Wall Street billionaires coming out of the woodwork, ready to write big checks, like Bill Ackman, the hedge fund guy, ready to write big checks for Cuomo. I don't see where the future is in that. I don't see how that is a good investment.
Let's hold that thought. We have a caller who wants to join the conversation. Caller, if you're listening, go ahead with your question or comment.
Hello, I appreciate this conversation very much, and I'd like to come back to John's question about what does candidate Mamdani have to do to win? Because I think the focus, I agree fully with Walton with what you're saying about not changing his message. He does have a different electorate when he's running across all of New York City. And I'm just wondering, in a practical way, if he wants to win, how is he going to reach out to the voters that are necessary to reach with a message that some people feel, is not all encompassing? Because I think to be governed the way, Bloomberg was able to tailor his messages in a way that made it possible for both win and to govern. So I think Mamdani has that potential, but how can he do it? He's 33, and does he have the bandwidth to do that?
Yeah. Thank you, caller. India?
Yeah, I think if anyone has the bandwidth, it would be Zohran at 33 with his youth and vitality. But I think the key is to stay outside, to stay on doors and having face-to-face conversations with folks, keep those phone banks running, and having real time, real life conversations with folks is going to be key to getting him over the finish line in November. And the other thing that I think is really important about this race is the number of zero prime voters they brought out, right? And I think that what in politics we often do is we focus on people who are traditional voters, people who we know are going to turn out. And that's how a lot of us wind up feeling like we have to have a more moderate messages to appeal to more conservative voters because those are the folks who tend to vote in every election who are dependable voters. They're dependable voters, but they're not motivated voters, right? These folks who have voted for the first time, right? These folks who are newly registered, who registered just to vote for Zohran, that's a motivated electorate. And that's not a person who's only going to go and cast their ballot, but that's a person that's going to go, they're going to bring five friends to vote. They're going to talk to their boomer parents about Zohran and why it makes sense to vote for him. And they're probably going to go out and knock some doors as well. And I think that that is a reason for the success of this campaign is that he has a lot of folks who are just super excited and motivated.
Speaking of Bloomberg, has he made an endorsement at all?
I don't think so. I mean, I could see Michael Bloomberg endorsing Eric Adams though. Like
Oh,
Eric Adams is he's a Wall Street wannabe, right? Like every time you see him, he's at some fancy party or hosting some party at Gracie Mansion, and he wants to be around wealthy people, and he minces no words and is not ashamed at all that he caters to the billionaire class.
right. Is Ruth's Action getting involved in the New York City mayor's race at all?
We don't typically do endorsements, but we do send out emails reminding folks to vote, encouraging people to go and volunteer with Zohran. And as an individual, I have every intention of going to find someone's couch to surf on for a little while so I can go down and be on the ground helping out.
Right. And once again, outline his platform for us. Really, how exciting it is. You know, what it means to be a democratic socialist, what it means to be a populist. I think it's a very exciting time for New York City and for the country.
Right. I think in its simplest terms, democratic socialists are people who put people first, particularly working class people, parents, and folks who pay into the system, who and don't necessarily see the benefits to our lives. So Zohan's platform centers around ensuring that folks can afford to pay their rent. It centers around fast and free buses. And when folks ask, how do you pay for things like that? Number one, people already pay taxes for the MTA to work, and it barely does. And number two, by taxing millionaires and billionaires. When I was running, and I would, knock doors in the wealthier parts of my city in Buffalo. People who are well-to-do don't mind paying more taxes for better services, right? It's the freaks who are in the top 1% who don't want to share because they don't know any different than to hoard wealth. And for people who exist in that level of privilege, equity or fairness to other people seems as if something is being taken away from them, and it's just not true. You pay your fair share, as we all should. um and the other thing is municipal grocery stores, right? To bring down the price of groceries. Great idea. It's working in other countries, it's working in other cities right here in the United States of America. And lastly, universal child care. You can't go to work if you can't make sure your children are taken care of. And a lot of folks are working only to pay for rent and childcare. And that's no, that's not a life.
Right.
So I think that his platform focuses on providing a good quality of life for all New Yorkers.
And how is AOC and some other progressives going to fit in the campaign?
Well, AOC has already endorsed, and I can't speak for her or her camp, but I do know that between the primary and general election, she came to Buffalo. Zohran also came to Buffalo, and I mean, when we talk about like um, progressive politicians and people in the progressive movement, we travel. We show up for one another. It's not just like we endorse and there's a graphic on social media in a tweet. We go to the city and we're on the ground. And when AOC came to Buffalo, we had a larger venue called the Town Ballroom, and there was a line probably 2 miles long,
Wow.
waiting to get into that venue. And that's the kind of energy she brings. I was in New York for Jamal Bowman's
Mhm.
campaign last year.
Yeah, we did a show on that campaign.
Right, and there was a rally there, and AOC was there, and they were just they bring out so many people, and these are events where it's not like we're just coming to a rally, right, and we're listening to a speech and then we're going home. These are like, you come, we're gonna get you all riled up, and then we're gonna send you out on doors,
Good.
right? So that's, you get thousands of people on doors in those days.
We have a few minutes left for you, but I wonder, are you interested in going back into a campaign and running for office? Uh, what?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to sound obsequious, but you're perfect. You're just perfect. I mean, you're young, you're black, you're beautiful, you're smart, and you work with
Well,
Norman, and you work with our friend Norman Solomon.
well, you know what needs to happen and take
Yeah,
place, and it's not a lot of money, just
we would love to see you back in politics, and we're public radio, so we can't make endorsements.
right.
But man, we need candidates like you.
Are you thinking about it?
Thank you so much for saying that. If the stars align, it took a lot out of me in 2021. It got so nasty, and I was a little bit disenchanted after that experience. But like I said, I've stayed involved behind the scenes, and if the time seems right and it feels good and it fits in with my life, I would definitely do it again.
Yeah, I ran for supervisor in Mendocino County 5 years ago, and I had no idea how much hard work it was going to be. I mean, you go for like say a union endorsement.
Mhm.
I remember sitting down with AFL-CIO and SEIU. First question they ask, they don't even ask about the platform. First question they ask is, who's on your steering committee? Who's on your finance
How
committee?
much money do you
How
have?
much money have you raised? Who'd you raise money from? Oh my God. It's like, I want to talk about the issues. I want to talk about the platform. They want to talk about, networking and endorsements and money. And, it was, I don't want to say I became cynical, but I became cynical.
Yeah,
It's
it's not what it's all cracked up to be.
Yep.
India Walton, it's been a delight to have you
Yeah.
for this first 30 minutes of Heroes and Patriots. We are encouraging you to continue on this path. And you are the senior strategist for Roots Action Education Fund. Thank you so much for being with
Yeah.
us this
Thank
morning.
you for having me, and have a great day.
Yeah, and again, India, I don't want to sound obsequious, but you give me hope for America. Right now with Trump, it's just very dark times, and I wonder about the future of America. And having you on the show, seeing your face here on our Zoom call, having you speak to your vision for America really gives me hope for my children and my grandchildren. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you again. So we've been speaking with India Walton from Roots Action Strategic Fund, and it is exactly 9:30, 9:31, and we are going to welcome our second guest, Kathy Kelly. Kathy Kelly has been with us before, and one of the more recent activities that she has been involved with is the Veterans for Peace Fast in New York. We had on Mike Ferner in last month, I believe, and he told they were in the middle of the fast, and we're going to hear an update on that and others. So, Kathy Kelly, welcome to the program and thank you for joining us.
Well, hello, Mary and John. Thank you for welcoming me. It's good to be with Heroes and Patriots.
What do you think of our last guest? Wasn't she exciting?
Well, I think India Walton is one of the reasons it makes sense to say follow the young people.
Yep,
Yeah,
you
She has
betcha.
a very fresh and a needed vision, and I know folks in Buffalo are deeply appreciative of her views.
Yeah,
right.
she's the real deal, and so are you. And so bridging that those the generation you and I are part of, and with India. Before we move on to Gaza and the subject at hand, what would you say? It's going to sound like a very general question and a very philosophical one, but what will it take to bring us together as a people, to bring generations together? I mean, if we're looking for a popular vision, a populist vision, what will it take to unite this country, in your opinion?
Well, John, Mary, I think that what I want to say will sound very contradictory because normally I've said, don't be governed by fears. Courage is the ability to control your fear.
Right.
But I also think that we have to be rational and look at what are the gravest threats to survival that we're all facing. And surely we have to name ecological collapse, nuclear annihilation, and the possibility of new pandemics breaking out
Right.
as three of the gravest threats. Well, what could be done in the face of those very, very fearful realities? Certainly, military defense will get us nowhere. It
Right.
doesn't even make sense to use the word defense because the militaries exacerbate all three of those threats. And so we need a turning. We need a turning away from preparation for war and also from the kind of amnesia that allows us to forget what we've done, even in just our lifetimes, but in every generation since the United States project began. Genocide and theft and avarice and greed and unbridled war really characterize this nation. Not to say that there haven't been some wonderful achievements, the civil rights movement, women's suffrage, the union movement, but we need a turning, and we need it desperately. And it will rest very much on people being educated in ways that move their minds and hearts.
Yes, thank you for those insights. One of my poetry teachers was Gary Snyder, the Pulitzer Prize winning poet and an environmentalist. I think he turned 95 years old recently.
94, 95.
94. I just wrote to him. I just wrote to him and offered to be his caretaker if he needed one. How about that for love? I do love the guy, all that he's done. And in his Pulitzer Prize winning book Turtle Island, you talk about the American project, the vision of this country. And we get lost in a lot of rhetoric a lot of the time. We get lost in patriotism and flag waving and what have you. But Gary points out that this country is doomed because it was founded on genocide. It was founded on the theft of native lands. It was founded on the slaughter of native people. The karma is so bad. The karma of the United States of America is so bad that it can't have a good outcome. It's very dark. It's very dark karma. How do we transcend that, Kathy?
Well, one of the important qualities, I believe, for all peace activists is empathy and trying very hard to empathize with the people who are bearing the greatest burdens of our war making. And, the information is there. We're seeing it on our screens. When I was with the FAST in New York City, we had many, many signs, but one of them said, "We cannot say we did not know."
Mhm.
And I remember as a youngster, when I began to learn about the Holocaust, about the concentration camps and Nazi determination to exterminate European Jewry, I thought, well, how could people be onlookers? How could they not, do something to say we won't let this go forward? And yet I can't pretend that, that's a bewildering matter now, because I'm living in a society that has watched a genocide on the screens of our computers and telephones. We cannot say we did not know. And we also, I believe, must acknowledge that there are vast sectors in our society profiting enormously from the horrific genocide that is being perpetrated every single day against Palestinians who mean us no harm.
Right. So the fast is, we had a short conversation before the show. The fast for Gaza has ended. Now what?
Well, I was very impressed with the younger veterans for peace, Joy Matzler, Phil Tottenham, and a young friend named Ray, who have said now we have to escalate, and we can't just say, okay, we did 40 days of witness and public outreach, and now we're done. Of course not. So, one way of escalating is to continue the education and outreach effort. And the team that were sort of the core fasters in New York are deliberating about becoming part of something called unarmed civilian protection in Palestine.
Hmm.
And I just want to mention that Francesco Albanese, the UN Special Rapporteur, who has just issued today in Geneva, Switzerland, a compelling and a very, very damning report on the war profiteering and the ways in which the economy of genocide has benefited various groups. She has also said that there ought to be unarmed civilian protection of Palestinians. And so there is a group now that's formed dedicated toward that goal, and particularly focused right now on villages in the West Bank. There are some ancestral lands inhabited by Bedouin sheep herders, and they're being constantly attacked. And in fact, I just learned this morning after speaking with you, John, that the particular village is Al Muajirat were attacked last night, and 60 sheep were stolen. Homes were ransacked and burned. The water and electrical systems have been damaged. And this is part of a land grab, an effort to establish Greater Israel that is going on with enormous support and partnership from the United States.
What's the name of the group again? And say I wanted to join the group. Say, say I just turned 73 years old a week ago, and I was thinking to myself, what now? My children
Uh-huh.
are raised, my grandchildren are happy. Nobody will miss me if I
Uh-huh.
go tonight. I need a new purpose.
Oh, well, John, wonderful to hear. Uh, buckle your seatbelts. This is called unarmed civilian protection in Palestine. And there's a person named Mel Duncan who had, with David Hartsoe, co-founded and organized the Nonviolent Peace Force. And the idea is not to send in tanks or armed soldiers into war zones, but to send in people who will travel without arms, but will, by virtue of reporting and witnessing, try to reduce the likelihood of violent attacks. And so there are teams in place now to join the villagers, and some are already present. But for those who are in the United States and are focused on these villages that are so vulnerable to attacks from violent settlers, people can form buddy networks, more or less, networks of people who will join on Zoom and get to know the villagers who are at risk, promise to educate their own communities about the people so that they won't be isolated by apartheid, and also contact their elected representatives, and certainly try to find out from the villagers what do they most need at any given moment in time. So it's a 6-month pilot project. And if enough people become involved, it could extend and also grow.
So say you wanted to be in Palestine and be one of these unarmed civilians. You would be embedded in a village, you would report back, you would bring money and other humanitarian aid in. How would it work?
Well, you certainly would be embedded in the village and you would report back. You wouldn't personally deliver humanitarian aid. If funds will be raised and are being raised, but that will be managed by the Unarmed Civilian Protection in Palestine group, so that it won't become a matter of competition amongst families. This does need to be pretty well coordinated. But of course, when 60 sheep are stolen, or when a settlement is built right on top of the aquifer that supplies the water for the villages, or when the village tractor is torched, as has happened, people do have needs, but those will be systematically coordinated in terms of any humanitarian assistance.
Kathy, I'm extremely interested in this, and we'll take this conversation off the air. I would be very interested in this. What you probably don't know about me is that I served on several UN peacekeeping missions. I was the guy wearing the blue helmet, and probably one of the most profound experiences I've had in my lifetime was, being part of a battalion of other UN peacekeepers, literally standing before aggressors bent on genocide, and a unarmed, at risk, super vulnerable civilian population. Literally
Where
being
was that?
Yugoslavia, literally being the only thing standing between aggressors and genocide. And that is that feeling inhabits me to this day.
Mm-hmm.
The feeling that I was protecting. And I would do it again, and this time without the helmet and without, the weapons that we were issued. I would be very happy to do that again. And I believe that being a witness for peace is just as important as being a peace activist, if that makes any kind of sense. I've had so many conversations with other vets like Matt Ho, who share this belief, and like with other vets, the probably the who have also served on U.S. peacekeeping missions, the medal I treasure most is the one issued by the United Nations, and it's blue, and it has the United Nations symbol on it, and you flip it over, and it is the only medal of valor that says "for peace" on the back. Most medals are for bloodshedding or bloodletting, for combat, for valor, for bravery. This is the one medal. I wish I had it in my hand right now. I'll send you a picture of it. Where you turn it over, it's the only medal that says "for peace," and that's the medal I want to be buried with, Kathy.
It's 45 minutes past the hour. You're listening to Heroes and Patriots, and John and I are speaking with Kathy Kelly. If you would like to join the conversation, 707-923-3911. Kathy, I wonder if when we spoke with Mike Ferner about a month ago, there was still problems with getting aid, humanitarian aid into Gaza. Can you give us an update on that? Where is Israel standing on that? And obviously, since we last spoke with him, there's been this conflict between Iran and Israel. Would you like to help our listeners understand where things are?
Mm. Well, the atrocity that has developed since you had that conversation with Mike is that a group called the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, based in Geneva, but comprised of many United States military contracting companies,
Hmm.
was bought in to distribute desperately needed food and other supplies for people in Gaza. But already the United Nations Relief and Works Association knew how to distribute food and supplies, had been doing so for many, many years. And the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation was definitely the new kid on the block. And they decided that they would only set up 4 hubs for food distribution. So if you're living in one region in Gaza and the hub is at the other end of the strip, then
Right.
you're basically being forcibly dislocated in order to try to save your family from starvation. So then when people got to the hubs, they were kind of encaged in these holding places while they lined up, queued up, in the early morning dawn for food. And then they were attacked. They were attacked by the Israeli Navy, by swarms of drones, and by tank-fired missiles. And this has gone on repeatedly, so that over 150 humanitarian organizations have signed a letter saying, stop, this is a war crime. And it basically, people were being lured to get food and then destroyed. And with regard to Israel and Iran, Israel noted that the Iranians had hit a hospital in Israel. Well, in fact, the Iranians had hit a military installation next to a hospital, and the windows in the hospital broke, but no one was killed.
Oh,
Now, if we look, since in the 21 months of war, in the past 21 months, if we look to the hospitals that have been hit by Israel in Gaza, it's just a stunning, horrific set of reports. Hundreds of people were sheltering in some of these Gazan hospitals, and the the hospitals were bombed with aerial attacks. The healthcare workers have been killed. Ambulance convoys have been attacked. Doctors have been detained. Dr. Hussam Abu Safia is still in detention. And just 2 nights ago, the head of the Indonesian hospital, Dr. Sultan, was killed along with his wife and his daughters and a son-in-law. It's just been vicious, vicious destruction of any possibility for healthcare within Gaza. And in the fast, we were limiting ourselves to 250 calories a day, but we weren't worried about people sniping at us or being
right.
without clean water or without
Yeah.
electricity or being forcibly displaced. But all of these nightmares are occurring for people in Gaza in what is, I think, almost unquestionably a genocidal attack to force people to say, okay, we can't suffer any longer. We'll leave this land. We'll go. We'll become ethnically cleansed.
Hmm.
So, what can challenge Israel? It's my belief that Israel should be suspended from the United Nations. Israel has flaunted international law so deliberately, so consistently. Israel possesses well over 91 thermonuclear weapons.
Right.
That's a flaunting of international law. Israel has been systematically killing, maiming, torturing, dislocating the civilian population in an act of ethnic cleansing. And so any state in the United Nations General Assembly has a duty, an obligation to stop trade with Israel, to stop any weapon shipments to Israel. And they could take the step, which was taken with South Africa
Right.
decades ago, of saying, you're no longer a member of the family of nations. You are not part of that group that's trying to eradicate the scourge of warfare, because instead you've chosen to eradicate an entire population of people who have lived in their ancestral lands for many, many centuries.
Yeah, it's not just Gaza. It's not just Palestine. The thing that horrifies me the most about Israel is it's kind of death mentality. The Israeli reporter Ari Shavat writes about the Samson option. The Samson option, that Israel has vowed that it will take their nuclear ordnance, their, I don't know, 150 to 200 nuclear weapons. And if they fear they're going to be overrun, if they fear they're going to lose a war, that they have this death pact where they will literally release all these weapons at the same time and bring death and destruction to the entire Middle East. I'm not making this up. You can just Google up, and I urge our listeners to Google up the Samson option. It's a real thing. It speaks to the heart of darkness of Israel, which is one of death, that Israel's entirely nuclear arsenal will be turned upon itself and the rest of the Middle East if it fears it's going to lose a war. That is just crazy.
Well, when I think about the greatest threat in terms of a tunnel and weapons in the region, certainly Hamas has tunnels, and Hamas brought weapons in through those tunnels. But the tunnel in the Negev desert, it's called the Shimon Peres nuclear facility, is extremely, as you say, dangerous because of the Samson option, and also because other countries are certainly going to want to say, we want those weapons as well. Right. Saudi Arabia is actively pursuing being able to get nuclear technology from the United States. And in this kind of sordid choreography, the Saudis are saying, well, if we normalize relations with Israel, then the United States has to commit to forming a military pact with us and giving us the nuclear technology, which can swiftly become nuclear weapons.
Yeah. Well, it's just I don't know what the answer is. What is the role that religion plays and faith plays in your peace activism? Do you pray? Do you as well as protest? I mean, I'm it's I'm kind of like, when you're confronted with this death culture of Israel, I'm kind of at a loss of words and a loss of answers, except to appeal to God for help. How do you deal with something like the Samson option? How do you deal with something like, like Israel's nuclear arsenal being turned against itself and the entire Middle East if it fears it's going to lose a war?
I think it's important to raise the lament, to long and hunger for a turning away from the militarism. I think the major religion in the United States is not Christianity, it's not Judaism, it's not even Islam, it's militarism.
Yeah.
And so to turn away from that, to say we are no longer going to worship gods of metal, the ability to create so much bloodshed. So certainly raising the lament is important, but then concurrent and as a outgrowth of that, organize. It's so crucial to keep on organizing ourselves, to connect with people all around the world, to say we will no longer subordinate ourselves to this kind of cruelty. We don't believe in child sacrifice. We don't believe in annihilation of our entire world.
Let's end on that note. We had India Walton on, who's political director for Roots Action, big organizing apparatus here in the States. Tell us about your organizing efforts, the organizations that you're part of. How do they organize, and how do our listeners get involved?
Well, I'm part of World Beyond War, and people are very, very welcome to get involved in what's called the Peace Wave, which will happen on the 12th of July. And that's a good way to recognize globally the efforts to turn away from militarism and say we want to abolish all war. And the idea is to be part of the wave by creating a 15-minute segment. So if any of your listeners would like to be part of that peace wave, I'd sure like to hear from them.
Kathy, we have two callers all of a sudden here as we're winding down. First caller, if you're listening, go ahead with your question.
Oh, yeah, well, I want to say, like the first demonstration I ever went to in Washington, D.C. was organized by Answer. And what compelled me is like, not in my name will you do that.
Right.
Right.
Thank you, caller. That's a good comment. We're going to try and grab this second call if we might, and then Kathy, maybe you can close us out. Second caller, if you're there, go ahead with your question.
Good morning. I am a Sephardic Jew, but I was fortunate to have been raised with different, not in a secluded Jewish, and they are practiced. They practice from birth to be Jewish and to be exclusive. They exclude others. And so they're practice warriors. It's like I was thinking, if none of us are practice warriors, it's because we weren't raised to be warriors from the get-go. I think that the key is to start in pre-K, at least in the United States, with little groups and call them government, and be obsessed with government, learn reading and writing and math through government. And everybody practice government at every level so that we don't have to have leaders. We can have groups that fit into departments that need our participation, if you know what I mean, so that we don't have to have elected leaders, because democracy died the day we elected representatives, people to represent us. So that the key is for people to participate in government every single day.
Thank you, caller. We need to wrap it up because we're over time. Kathy, sorry we aren't able to really get into that, but thank you for being our guest, and we want to have you back and talk further about this topic.
Well, thank you, both of you. It's been a privilege to be with you.
God bless you, Kathy.
That is our show, and we are going to turn it back over to Cece.